Let's open up the phones now to get your thoughts on the proposed constitutional amendment that is top of the Illinois ballot. When you head to the polls, every voter across the state is going to be asked this question. And I'm asking you now, if the election were held today, how would you vote for Amendment 1? 217-629-7970. That's the phone number here with Springfield's Morning News. I'm Greg Bishop, and again, you can call in at 217-629-7970, where you can sound off on whether or not you think that the Illinois Constitution needs to be amended with Amendment 1. So what is Amendment 1 all about? Well, obviously, we'll unpack that a bit for you, but for some of you who already know how you're voting, I would love to hear your thoughts. Good morning. You're on WMAY.
How you doing? Doesn't the passage of this thing eliminate the right to work that Rauner put in place?
Rauner didn't put in place any right to work. I think there were attempts from some Republicans, but they've been in the minority and super minority parties. So we have nothing of that sort in the state of Illinois.
But putting it in the Constitution would pretty much cement the fact that you have to pay fair share to the union, right?
No, that's also not from my understanding. You have the choice as to whether or not, at least in the public sector. In the private sector, it's a bit different. Right to work could prohibit private sector unions from forcing people to pay dues to a union. But as it is right now, public sector workers, and this is by the U.S. Supreme Court, the U.S. Supreme Court decided in Janus v. AFSCME that public sector workers, from teachers to public librarians, jail guards, or whatever, they don't have to pay a union that has exclusive bargaining rights set by law. So that was something that Janus v. AFSCME did.
Wait a minute, you said, like Department of Corrections, you do not have to pay union dues.
Correct. All public employees do not have to pay a union to have their job, which before Janus v. AFSCME, that was the case. If you didn't pay dues, then the union could line things up to have you dismissed from work.
When did that pass? Because I was a state worker.
That was 2018, 2019 when that U.S. Supreme Court case came down, I believe.
Yeah, I retired in 2012. So.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, I appreciate the call. So how are you going to vote on this?
Oh, I'm definitely voting it down. I'm anti-union because.
All right, I got you down. So you're going to vote no. I appreciate the call. 217-629-7970. Good morning. You're on WMAY.
Hey, as I understand it, this is basically to protect the people who, like if you work for Amazon or Starbucks and you want to have collective bargaining, you can have it. And I'm oversimplifying it. I know that. I think I'm for it. Honestly, I'm just really tired of these things where you have, and keep in mind, I used to work for state government, but I've got my own business and my wife has her own business. But overall, I think people deserve to have the right, because as individuals, we're lousy at bargaining. Most people are lousy at bargaining. They have the right to have their rights protected in the workplace or trying to get a paycheck. I mean, you've got people in like the Mississippi Delta working for $2.13 if they have a tip wage.
Yep.
And
but they have to be, if they work that tip wage, and I think some people don't realize this, is if they don't make enough tips, then the employer has to match minimum wage. And I'll tell you, having been a tipped employee, I loved going into work every day and walking out of there with cash. And having being a consumer of somebody who goes to places where there are tipped employees, I tip mightily.
That depends on the state, because some of the states, I think Mississippi has it where you have to get at least $40 worth of tips per month.
Well,
yeah.
So again, we can go down more of the. I got full phone lines, but you said you'd support it. I appreciate the call. 217-629-7970. Talking about the Amendment 1. You're on WMAY. Do you support it or oppose it?
I definitely support it, but I also want to take issue with something you said just a couple minutes ago.
All right.
You said that prior to the Janus decision, that if you didn't pay dues, your employer could how you put it? Basically,
I think I said something to the effect the union can line stuff up to have you dismissed.
that's not true. That's not true. Because before Janus, at least in the public sector, I'm not talking about private sector, but at least in the public sector, you had to at least pay fair share, which was, approximately 80% of what a full share due would be. And you didn't have a choice. You had to at least pay fair share dues. Now, after Janus, you don't have to pay. It's all or nothing. And again, the union can't do anything about it.
That's because they previously, years ago, voted to have exclusive bargaining authority, in essence, not allowing for any other unions to come in and provide representation. So whenever the court said, no, you can't force people into an association. Like this is really a First Amendment right of what the Supreme Court had to say. You can't force people into an association.
Yeah, well, the problem I have with Janus is there's people out there that don't want to pay dues for whatever their misguided beliefs are. But if you have a job that's union and you have your pay and your benefits and all your perks from being in a union, you ought to step up to the plate, do the right thing, and pay your dues and stop complaining about it.
Got you down. 217-629-7970 is the phone number getting your calls on Amendment 1. Do you support it or oppose it? I got full phone lines. I was going to go and unpack what Amendment 1 does, but full phone lines with you guys chiming in on this, so we'll get to your calls. Good morning. You're on WMAY.
Good morning. I voted early. And I voted no on Amendment 1 because I believe it's also disguised as a tax referendum that will cost the average Illinois home around $2,100 a year. Taxes will go up. And also, I believe that it's a power grab, transferring away away from our elected representatives to the state union bosses. So it gives less power to our legislatures and more power to the union bosses. And I just think it's anti-business and anti-taxpayer. I'm not against workers, but I think the title of it is wrong. I think it's misleading. I voted no.
Appreciate the call. 217-629-7970. Good morning. You're on WMAY. Your thoughts on Amendment 1?
Yeah, I am voting a big fat no on Amendment 1. Haven't we learned from having the pension stuff in the Constitution that we can't really reform pensions in this state because every time you try to do something, somebody runs to court and says you're diminishing pensions, and it's declared unconstitutional. Illinois has strong enough union laws in this state. The private sector, it doesn't apply because the federal government handles that. This is just a wet, sloppy kiss to public sector unions, and we do not need it.
Appreciate the call. Seems pretty passionate on that end. Hearing your thoughts about whether you support or oppose Amendment 1. It's the top of the question. Everybody that votes in Illinois is going to be asked this question. It requires 3/5 of those voting to amend the Constitution or a simple majority of all votes cast. So that's a little confusing at times. So we'll see exactly what happens in the wash. But getting your thoughts on do you support Amendment 1? And I've got full phone lines here, and I'll get all of them lined up, I promise. So stay with me. 217-629-7970. That's the phone number. I do want to quickly just go over some of the pros and cons. So those who support it say that it's going to codify collective bargaining for a whole host of things. Those who oppose it say that is taking away the ability for reform legislation to try to shore up costs for, say, municipalities or for school districts so that they can actually negotiate things like, the cost of insurance or like vacation or like pay. But if it's codified, then they can have collective bargaining to oppose that. Others say that this could open the door for public safety strikes. If you have collective bargaining enshrined in the Illinois Constitution, then you could have the ability for public safety like police and fire to then come come and strike. We've seen that up in Chicago, Chicago public school teachers, they shut down the schools like 3 or 4, maybe 5 times in the span of 3 or 4 years by going on strike. So we don't necessarily want our police or firefighters to go on strike because that would be pretty detrimental to public safety. So some are opposing it, including the Illinois Municipal League, opposing Amendment 1 for that reason. All right, we'll get to your calls. Good morning. You are on WMAY. Thanks for your patience. Your thoughts on Amendment 1?
I already voted yes for it. And I'm going to go back a few callers ago that said that, he's anti-union. He retired a few years back. That's real great, why he enjoys his pension and everything that he gained during that time as a union employee that the union fought for. So I'm glad he's a freeloader and proud of it. So,
all right, you can throw around the freeloader comments, but others may say that that individual worked his tail off to be able to retire, and he worked for those benefits. He didn't freeload anything, unless he sat around on his hands all day. But I don't think that's the case, at least from him saying, hey, he worked, he's retired, and he earned those things. It wasn't because of some union dues that he paid. Good morning. You're on WMAY. Your thoughts on Amendment 1? You're on the air. Go ahead.
No.
You're going to vote no on Amendment 1. Do you have some rationale as to why?
The union caller who called in and said, you will pay your dues. Yeah, that's all it's got to take, man.
Got you down. 217-629-7970 is the phone number. We'll take a few more calls here. Good morning. Would have been. Let's see if we can open that line back up. And good morning. You're on WMAY. What's up?
Morning, Greg. This is why I love your show, because you get a gambit of everybody who thinks every different thing. And I absolutely love it. You get a full wide spectrum of just every opinion. And the caller that called in a little bit ago, just like what the last caller said, it's just the union dues. You got to step up and pay it. I mean, that definitely sounds like one of JB's thugs that are going around to each individual state office and just trying to be an enforcer of union policy and everything like that.
Well, and one thing I pushed back a bit when he said that that individual was freeloading because they retired with all the benefits that the union gave them. The union may have been involved in the negotiation with a person they funded politically across the table. All right, that might have happened. They may have negotiated that, but that worker worked. That worker worked for the benefits. That worker worked for the pay. That worker worked for his retirement, and it diminishes work if you just kind of say, "Oh, you're a freeloader," and that kind of.
You are 100% correct. You are 100% right, because that person worked for everything that he got and basically paved the way for the other caller to just call in and make fun and again be one of JB's little pawns and enforcers. I mean, and it's just pathetic. To be
I appreciate the call. Where do you stand on this? I take it that he opposes Amendment 1. All right, I think this was an interesting exercise in kind of gauging where everybody's at on this. And let's see if we can just briefly here go through some of the pros and cons that, again, the Secretary of State has laid out in a pamphlet that you've already gotten or will get. And it's an explanation of the proposed arguments. And ultimately, it talks about the actual language, saying employers, this is what they want to put in the Constitution. Employees shall have the fundamental right to organize and to bargain collectively through representatives of their own choosing, of the purpose of negotiating wages, hours, and, quote, working conditions to protect their economic welfare and safety at work. So some highlighting how that could mean COVID-19 mandates. That the unions could push for that. And again, we saw that up in Chicago with the teachers union pushing for that. And some more from the language here of the proposed amendment. Working conditions of employment and workplace safety, including any law or ordinance that prohibits the executive or the execution or application of agreements between employers and labor organizations that represent employees requiring membership in an organization as a condition of employment. And then it goes on to lay some more out. So you'll get this pamphlet from the Secretary of State that'll lay all this out for you. And you should definitely read it through. And I think the pamphlet also has some pros and cons that are laid out in that particular that question. So we may go over this again in the future. It is Springfield's Morning News. Don't forget, I am raising money for Real Men Wear Pink. I've raised over $1,300 to get my nails painted pink. And if I raise $4,000, I will dye my hair pink. All right, so let's make that happen. Go to WMAY.com/pink. Donate today. And Real Men Wear Pink, an effort to raise money for breast cancer research and awareness. And special shout out to Heartland Hearing. Better hearing starts today. Again, WMAY.com/pink. Real Men Wear Pink. We'll take one last call here. Late for a break, but good morning. You're on WMAY.
Yeah, I'm the one that called earlier. I vote no, and I've risked my life for 16 years at Pontiac Correctional Center, then another 9 as a parole agent. So I work for my benefit.
There you go. That's what I'm saying. I appreciate the call. 217-629-7970 is the phone number. Take a break here. It is Springfield's